a pre-recording or a get to know my co-hosts before they come onto the show. But in most cases, it's people don't like that. Why? Because it's time consuming. Yeah, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and rule that out.
Everything's sacred and holy. Would you please shut your yapper?
Just to keep the show authentic and fresh and all that good stuff. So I was like, let's go ahead and rule that out. But it started becoming a hassle, Bob. So
yeah. No, I understand.
Then go ahead.
Go ahead.
But yeah.
That's true. And then in one time I did a pre-show, and some of those questions that people come up with, like, what is the most important motto in your life? So you get stuck on some of them. But anyway, we had this pre-show. We talked about that, and it stumped me. And then I came up with a little saying, and I didn't quite even understand it myself all that well. But we talked about it for a little while, and believe it or not, it was that pre-show that created the entire show, but it also had a significant change on my life because it helped me to identify something about me.
Exactly. And I just thought about something. About you.
Yeah.
I didn't even introduce you.
Me.
We already getting the ball started. We haven't even got to the introduction. Okay.
Don't hold back how you feel. Welcome to the platform for the misunderstood and creatives alike. So roll a joint and pour a shot. You're listening to the Dash It Out podcast, the show that brings your after hours talk to daytime. No wrong opinions and all unfiltered. With your host, Vic Tor.
So, welcome to another episode of the Dash It Out show. And as you know, it's an all-new talk with all new guests. On today's episode, we will be joined by my awesome co-host, Mr. Bob Martin. Now, Bob is a certified meditation teacher and work freeing minds from narratives. We're going to get a little bit more into that later on in the show. He had been a successful criminal trial lawyer for 40 years. As a Taoist, Buddhist, Christian, he worked at freeing people from dogma. He also represents parents of abused and neglected children who labor under the mental illness, anger, and addiction. Also a professor at Elon University. And another fun fact that I read in your bio, which is you was a lawyer for the mob in Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about that later. Okay. Anyway, you realize your life was quickly going downhill. You discovered his therapist was a disciplined English language editor for Hu Ching Nai. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. A second-generation Taoist master from the Shaolin Temple, which motivated him to start his journey. This was my first experience of a system of virtue, he said. Studied under a master Nai for 8 years, and it transformed his life. He has students who range from Fortune 500 CEOs to ADHD adolescents and the addicted. And he's here with us today on the Dash It Out show. So let's give a round of applause to our awesome co-host, Mr. Bob Martin. Bob, thank you so much for coming on to the show, buddy. Let's get into it.
Okay, thanks for having me. And before we get into it, I want to say this. I want to thank you, because putting together a podcast like this is no easy task. You have to find folks, and there's a lot of organization. There's a lot of work behind the scenes, and you provide this platform for folks to reach out and provide little tips and tricks and things for living a better life. And that's such a wonderful service that I don't want to go forward without giving you a deep thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I feel as though we all have voices. We all deserve to be heard. And long as the messages get out there, I think that's what's most important overall, It's an off-topic question, but I'm sorry, I got to get this out. What was it like being a lawyer for the mob in Miami? Like, what was that? And how did that fit into your narrative, into creating and shaping the person that you are today?
Yeah. So when I say I was a lawyer for the mob, I need to clarify that a little bit. It's not like I was consigliere, like you see in the mob
Okay.
films, where there's the
Yes.
inside guy who's the family lawyer who gives them, you know,
Okay.
that's not what it was.
Okay. Okay.
What happened is that I was a prosecutor. I was a district attorney under Janet Reno, who I bet a bunch of your listeners are too young to remember the Clinton administration, but she was the attorney general for Bill Clinton. Anyway, we hit the mob up for a whole bunch of money, like over $70 million. And in what's called a RICO case, racketeering involved corrupt organization, RICO. Anyway, I left the office shortly thereafter, and that's when, I'll call him Johnny. Johnny came to see me and said, you got to be pretty good to hit us for that much money, because we got a lot of really good lawyers, and I'd like to send you some cases. So it was more of a relationship that it was being the lawyer for the mob. I did a lot of cases for them, and I got to know the people that were high up in the Colombian, Cuban, Haitian, Peruvian, and Italian families.
Okay, so that is definitely not what I thought. But that's interesting though. Wow, 70 million racketeering? God damn. That's a lot.
It's a
Probably
lot.
most money I probably see in my lifetime. Maybe.
Yeah, so
Who
we had a
knows?
good
Who knows?
relationship. I mean,
Okay.
I told him I wasn't going to do anything illegal. I wasn't going to do anything unethical. And I told him that that's in your best interest because you want a lawyer that's respected by the courts. You don't want somebody that's not believed. You want to go in there with a sense of being straightforward. It worked out for a while until Johnny's son got arrested, and then he wanted me to do some stuff that I wasn't willing to do. That's when I decided to move to North Carolina.
Yeah, it started getting too deep.
It started
It
getting
seems as though, yeah. So yeah, that's definitely intriguing. I mean, the life of a lawyer, a prosecutor alone. Yeah, I can see why that particular field, you get paid big because you do take on a lot. Regardless of your client, either good or bad, it's your job to ensure that they get the least sentence or none at all. Typically, as a lawyer, I'm assuming it's none at all.
Yeah, no. Yes and no. A lot of people ask me, being a criminal defense lawyer, a lot of people ask me, you probably have thought this yourself. How can you represent those people? How can you represent somebody that sexually abused a 7-year-old girl?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I'll be trying to ask. Like, why take on a case if you know? I mean, yes, money talks and bullshit walks, but come on, Bob. Like, there's some cases that really, you should just kind of just like throw under the bus because it kind of takes away from. I mean, in a sense, okay, it's weird because freedom, you have the right, innocent to proven guilty, which I deeply understand that. But there's a confidentiality that comes between the client and the lawyer, in which, the client tells the lawyer, specific details or even their truth. And it's like, knowing that, I mean, you can't go against it, but it's like, I don't know. I think that after a while, that will really take a toll on you. Have that happened to you? Like, they start taking a toll on you?
Well, that didn't take a toll on me. What took a toll on me was hanging out with those guys and going to all those chrome and glass discotheques and doing all that white powder with them. And that took a toll on me. Okay, took a toll on me. But
Got you.
Let me talk about the other thing for a second. So prosecutors, the DAs, and the cops, they enforce the law. When somebody breaks the law, they go out, they arrest them, and they prosecute them. The defense attorneys, they prosecute also. They don't prosecute the law, they prosecute the Constitution. We are the only guys that stand in between the police power of the state and you, the normal everyday guy. When somebody starts talking about profiling, It's only the defense attorneys that will take on cross-examining the cop. Why did you stop him? We're the ones that ask those questions. It's not about getting the guy off. I mean, whatever the results of the case are, those are the results of the case. And you put up vigorous representation as your goal. But what you're really doing, you're not doing it for the dirtbag. You're doing it for freedom, and the freedom that everyone has to be protected from unreasonable actions by police officers. So I don't do it for the dirtbag. I do it for the Constitution. I do it for the Fourth Amendment, for the Third Amendment, for your freedom from being brought in to a police station and kept there for 28 hours while you're mercilessly grilled until they wring a confession out of you, and then they put you in jail or kill you because they did that. I'm the guy that cross-examines them and investigates and finds that stuff out. And I'm the guy that gives that to the jury so that that poor guy who gave a confession because it was forced doesn't go to jail. Now, in doing that, I'm going to represent a lot of really guilty people.
Oh, fuck!
But that's okay. Because as long, I basically say to the police and to the DA, if you're going to get to my guy, okay, but you're going to cross your T's and you're going to dot your I's and you're going to do it by the law. Otherwise, I'm coming after you.
That's badass.
Wow, that
And
sounds like
that's-
I'm sorry, continue.
That makes it all worthwhile. It's like Racehorse Haynes say, the defense bar is the trustees of justice and the guardians of liberty. Because, like you were saying, like, and that's typical. I'm not, you say, yeah, there's certain people you just got to throw them under the bus. It's just those people who the society wants to throw under the bus that will accept the shortcuts and will accept the police taking shortcuts and violating their rights because they figure this guy should just be thrown under the bus. But the problem is, if you throw him under the bus, then you start throwing anybody you suspect under the bus.
Gotcha.
And then where does it...
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah. So a lot of people, that's something that, a lot of people don't really see. And after, I'm sorry to keep going on, but after my experience with the mob and after my experience with Master Knee and having that life transformation, when I got to North Carolina, the only people I represented were folks that couldn't afford a lawyer. That's the only thing I would do, is represent folks that couldn't afford a lawyer. And those are what Jesus would have called the least of these. And so that's what I devoted my life to afterwards.
I love hearing you speak about, it's like the evolution of your life, right? And I do love how the fact you may mention that, if you throw one under the bus, then you have to throw all of them under the bus. And you being a defense attorney at the time doing what you do, it was like, yes, there are some, assholes that you had to, represent. And then you also had those who was really there that really needed your assistance. And it's funny because I'm just thinking about you, like kind of like charging into a room, like,
I'm warning you.
just thinking like suits or something. But yeah, it kind of balances itself out, right? It's almost like a universal thing. It kind of balances stuff out, the good, the bad. So let's go ahead and move along and talk about your Taoist Christian devotional. Can you tell us a little bit more about this book?
Sure. So I was born into a family. My folks were Eastern European immigrants. My dad came from Hungary and my mom from Lithuania. And my dad was Hungarian royalty, actually. But
Nice.
the communists, the Bolsheviks, back in the turn of the century, my dad was born in 1898, just to freak you out. And so the communists, when they invaded Hungary, they killed all his relatives, and they were just slaughtered. And my mom was Roma Gypsy, and all of those folks were killed by the Nazis. So I don't have any ancestors, really. And they came to the conclusion that they're really, they weren't atheists. They were really non-theists. They just didn't talk about God. It wasn't in our family. We didn't have a religion that we followed or anything. So I kind of grew up, just learning about what's right and wrong from what I could gather. And then I became a lawyer, and I had all that experience. Like I mentioned, I was going out with these guys and hanging out with them, and my life was kind of going south. And I was seeing a therapist, and the therapist came to a big part of my life where I had to decide this way or that way, to move forward with the project that was killing me or not. And I asked him about it, and he did this weird thing. He started throwing coins and making mathematical calculations and doing something. He came up with a number, and he's a therapist, and I'm paying him like $65 an hour to listen to me, and he's throwing coins. I got real pissed off, but he showed me, he put down a number, 62, and then he opened this book up to chapter 62 and showed it to me. And it said, retreat. And I go, screw you. And I got real mad and I stomped out, but it was the right answer. So I stopped doing what I was doing, and I pulled my life out of the hole. And then I went back and I said, what was that? And he said, well, that's something called the I Ching. It's the book of changes. It shows you and teaches you how to go with the flow of life. You were at a place where you needed to retreat, and that's what it told you. And I go, wow, that's pretty cool. And so I said, where's that come from? And he goes, it comes from Taoism. Tao means the way. So this is a philosophy. It's not really a religion. It's just a philosophy of how the easiest and best way to live life. It's the way to live life. And it's got a lot of wisdom in it. And I loved it. And I took to it, and I found out that he was the English language translator for Master Wat Ching Ni, who was a 72nd generation master from the Shaolin Temple. The Shaolin temples where Kung Fu and Tai Chi, all that stuff comes from. So I studied under Master Ni for 8 years. And
nice.
By the time I came to North Carolina, I was a very different human being, a very different person. And I devoted myself. I went back to school, got a master's in social work so I could take care of my clients completely, not just their legal stuff, but, what was inside as well. And I was making a difference in folks' lives. That's how that transformation came about. So I wound up marrying a Southern Baptist Bible literalist. And she is somebody who believes the Bible, every story in it is absolutely true, like Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark and all that. And I didn't grow up with that, so it was all pretty hard for me to believe. So I'll tell you a funny story. One day she's going to church, and she's got these sad eyes. And I say, well, why are you so sad, hon? She goes, well, I love you so much, and I hate it that you won't go to heaven with me. Because I hadn't been saved. And I said, well, I hate it that you won't be reincarnated with me. And she kind of laughed. But she started telling me things that they were telling her in church. And I would say, well, that lesson is the same as chapter 32 of the Tao Te Ching, of this other book, in my understanding. So I started saying, well, since it's the same wisdom and it's the same lesson, maybe I could take what's in my books, my understanding, and put it into her language, put it in Christian terms. And so I started to doing that, and she loved it. And every time I did it, we would get into these wonderful conversations about life and how life works. We bonded so much more closely. Now we've been married for 23 years, and it's just a wonderful relationship. We meet on so many different levels, and she's free to have her belief, and I'm free to have my belief, because we understand that it's really the same belief. It's just in a different language.
That's
So
nice
I
how
put
you
it
was
all
able to.
together in a book. Yeah, I put it all together in a book, and
Yes.
it got
You have it with
published.
you?
Yeah, there it is. I could read you a piece of it.
There we go. Yes, go ahead. Shoot, I am the way. I love how you
Okay,
made
I am the way.
the cross on the book. Interesting.
Yeah, to make the cross, and every chapter starts with the name of the chapter and a title that I gave it and a quote from a famous person, and then my Christian translation of the original Tao. So I just opened the book up randomly to chapter 49.
Okay.
And the name of the chapter is Jesus Went Where He Was Called to Go. And the little quote that I have is from Desmond Tutu, which says, "Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world." And my text that I wrote reads like this: Jesus did not need preconceived ideas and plans. He went where he was called to go and responded to what the world presented. He did this from his nature. He answered the people's questions as their concerns were his concerns. He was good to those that are good and to those that are not good, because his very nature is good. He was honest with those that were honest and with those that were not honest, because his very nature was virtue. Not being concerned with worldly things, he was one with the world. People turned their eyes and ears to hear him, and he regarded them with love, with the love that parents have for their children. So that's chapter 49. Now, if you want to know where that came from, for example, I read you the original Tao of the same chapter, okay? So this says, in the Tao Te Ching, chapter 49 says, "The master's mind is shut off from the world only for the sake of the people does she muddle her mind. They look to her in anticipation, yet she treats them all as her children." So you can see where it came from, how it's similar, but putting it in terms of Jesus's unconditional love for all of the people and his failure to be attached to worldly goods, which the reason Jesus was so respected was because he didn't seek after the same things that most of us look for, wealth and power. And therefore, he was respected by the world. And that's kind of counterintuitive to what we normally think. But anyway, that's how the book came about.
That's interesting because one of my questions I was going to ask, does Taoism and Christianity fit into each other and vice versa? And you just kind of proved it. I mean, you may have some naysayers that would feel as though like you shouldn't pluck a piece or take away from the Bible. But honestly, realistically, let's keep it on it. There's so many things that have been taken in and out the Bible. I feel personally that's where you have the Old Testament, the New Testament. It's so many books that's been taken out. And, so personally, I feel as though you're doing everyone a justice because you have those who I do consider myself spiritual. I don't consider myself religious. I do believe in in God. I do believe in Jesus. I do believe in a higher power. I do believe in energy. I do believe in the cosmic energies. I do believe in everything. Okay, I wouldn't say the whole mysticism, but I'm a strong believer. Okay, it's because how my life is kind of set up. But at the same time, I was born and raised Christian. I grew up in a Christian household. So, but overall, I don't really identify as religious. And it's things when I tell my father that he gets very upset. Remind you, he grew up in a very deep-rooted Christian household, and his mom and so forth and so forth. For me to be like, oh, well, I'm not religious, I don't believe in like just religion. I don't believe in, I'm not like deep into the whole Christianity, but I do believe in God. I do believe in the word. I do, I practice it daily. Sometimes I may forget, like you said, Jesus was tempted and he went through life. He didn't have on his heart and mind of the things of this world that we do, like knowing that it's it's a bit inspirational, it's motivational. And I kind of lost my train of thought. But you just kind of like prove my point that it can actually fit into one another.
It does fit. And the beautiful thing is you're exactly the person that I wrote the book for, because since it's been out, the letters that I get from folks are almost all the same. I grew up in a Christian family and the church turned me off. When they found out my son was gay, they kicked me out of my old church. There wasn't any inclusivity. It was all exclusive. It's my way or the highway, or the science doesn't fit with the beliefs, or it was the institution of the church that turned me off. And so many people threw the baby out with the bathwater. And because they didn't like the church, they didn't to even hear about Jesus anymore, because that reminded them of the church. But Jesus was a terrific wisdom teacher. Whether
Gotcha.
you consider him the Son of God or not, it doesn't matter, because what he taught was the way of how to live life. And
live it more
remember,
abundantly.
and live it more abundantly, and live it more easily, and live it more
Yes.
happily. Somebody said something today. I was meeting with a couple of men and we were talking, something was said and it blew me away because I'd never heard it this way before. And he was a retired pastor, but very liberal and very progressive. But anyway, he says, they say that Jesus is your savior. And I never thought that I needed a savior. But when I think of Jesus as my savior, this is how I mean it. I mean it like, over here, I feel a temptation to want to be wealthy. I feel a temptation to want to have power. I feel a temptation to want what my neighbor has. I have a temptation to want that beautiful woman. I have all of this stuff over here. But then I think over here, I think Jesus, I think service, I think humble, I think kind. I have those thoughts. And I look at Jesus as the person, the kind of thinking that I need to have to balance off those temptations. And so that's how I think of Jesus as saving me, because his teachings give me the ability to balance off the stuff that would get me into a life that I wouldn't want to live. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Once again, that whole balance, so I really feel as though Jesus came in to like balance, which was the case to take away the sin that was in the world, to restore balance.
Yep.
So
I'm with you
so
100%.
For you to take that on and to be thinking about, okay, it's almost like the bracelet or necklace people have, like, what would Jesus do? WWJD.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I can definitely get behind that. So one of the things I do want to ask you though, so as you're a meditation teacher, okay, and
Yeah.
as far as meditation goes, I'm a firm believer in meditation. I try to meditate every day. Typically I do, but in most cases I at least meditate 3 to 4 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a huge preconceived notion that you have to clear your mind to really meditate. You can't think about nothing. You study with Shaolin monks and in the temple for 8 years. What is the true method into meditating? Because I thought the process to meditate is to put things into perspective. You're a meditation teacher, and I just want to ask you that while I got you here. How do you truly meditate?
Okay, that's a great question. So the idea that you have to clear your mind, you have to empty your mind, has done more damage to the world of meditation than anything else.
Thank you.
Because, people say, I want to meditate. So they will say, I sat down and then all these thoughts came into my head. I can't meditate. I could never meditate because I have all these thoughts. And that is so not right. I mean, it's not wrong. It's not, it's so misunderstood. Meditation is not about clearing the mind or emptying the mind. You can't do that. You never, ever will do that, because 172 million generations of human beings evolved with the idea that we need to constantly scan our environment for danger. In the jungle, you don't know where the tiger is, where the cobra is. You don't know. So you have to always be scanning for danger. And that function is what gives you all of your thoughts. And so that is what it means to be human. You can't help it. It will happen. The idea, though, you want to step back. Here's the big thing. Most people see something and they have a thought, and that thought comes up like it is their truth. Okay? Let's say some old white guy is walking along and he sees some young black man walking down, and he's got his pants halfway down his butt and his underwear. Okay? Now, this guy is going to have all kinds of thoughts about that. And for him, those thoughts are not thoughts. They are the truth. And he is right to him. Now, the idea of this being a cultural phenomenon, the idea of this being any one of 100 different reasons, that doesn't even come up. Whatever the thought is that came up is what he becomes. He is his thought.
Okay.
And what meditation teaches you is that you are not your thoughts. You have thoughts. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts come from who thou knows where they come from. They come from your database. Psychologists have one answer. Religious people have another answer. Spiritual people have another answer. It doesn't matter. The thoughts are not there. Then they're there. And then they're not there. And it's that strange phenomena of a thought that runs our lives. And that's nuts. Our lives are run by this crazy thought that came up in our head that may or may not be anywhere close to accurate or true. Right? So you're not your thoughts. And what meditation does, it is a way of like breaking you away from being your thoughts and putting you back in touch with, because you say, you like this, you say, we all say, I had a thought. So I would ask, who is the I that had the thought? Who is the I that had the thought? And everybody say, well, it's me. No. The thought is you created the thought. Now, there's something, and I believe, and this is just my belief, I don't have any proof, I believe that human beings inherently are good and that human beings inherently want to connect with each other for mutual benefit. I believe that to be true. But on top of that, years and years of growing up in this society has imposed conditioning after conditioning after conditioning, truth after truth, opinion after opinion, until we're no longer in touch with that inherent goodness that we are. And all these thoughts are the product of that conditioning. And there's no way to change the thoughts that come up without getting to know them and allowing them to come up and watching them, because it's a strange thing. Let's say that we'll go back to that old white guy, right? Now, his thoughts are going to come up based on a lot of cultural conditioning, right? People around, he's all arrogant. People in my tribe don't do that.
You know.
So that's a product of his conditioning. Now, can he stop having that thought? No, he can't stop having the thought. But if that thought comes up and he notices it and he takes note of it, he goes, oh, look at that thought. There, I had that thought. Okay, so I notice it. Then something like that happens again, and I have the thought again. And I go, oh, there's that thought again. There's that thought again. Oh, there's that thought again. After a while, it's like crazy. It's like your mind is this really bratty little boy, a bratty little girl who likes to bug you with shit. Excuse my language. I'm likes to bug you with stuff.
Good.
It likes to bug you with stuff. And if it gets it, that you're aware of it, it gets bored and it leaves you alone. And so if you notice the thought, and then there's that thought again, there's the thought again, all of a sudden it stops coming up. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I can promise you, you stop having that thought. And little by little, you can stop having all of the thoughts that get in your way and have more of the thoughts that are helpful and lead you to a productive and good life. And so you actually have a say in reconstructing your database so that you have the thoughts you want to have instead of the thoughts that the world gave you.
And database is pretty much your mind, your mentals. And I
Your
want to
mind
touch
and all the conditioning.
and all the conditioning, right? And that is what meditation does for me. It helps me to put things in perspective, help me to face my fears, face my shame, my anxiety, my guilt, my anger, my depression. And also it helps put in perspective my hopes, my dreams, my aspirations, my goals, my love, like everything, you know. Because one of my issues and problems were when I was going through a lot. I was homeless. I had to deal with the loss of my little sister. She committed suicide.
Sorry.
I had to deal with so much, being robbed at gunpoint, and like so much, like it was so much stuff that was happening, and it wasn't like every so often, like it was all happening at once. But one of the things that I really hate doing, one of my biggest pet peeve, is becoming a victim of my circumstance. Okay, I hate that. I hate it, especially being a black male. It was like my life was. It wanted me to go through what I went through to rise above, so I can motivate the next one. Okay, I had a lot of people was like, "Well, how you staying so calm? How you staying so humble?" And like now, where I'm at in my life now, everyone's a little bit surprised and like, "Well, I'm surprised you doing this and doing that, and you're not even from here. Like how?" I rose above when I meditated. I always try to separate myself, okay? Whether it's my home life, work, or whatever I was going through, emotionally, mentally, I always try to separate it, put it in the box, and face it head on. Face it head on. And when I was able to do that, I started to get a perspective, and I started to find myself, I just found my vibrations raising high. And it helps me to really see things clearly, not for what they are, but what they can be. And that was just me. And that was how meditation helped me. So what are some key takeaways that you want to give the audience before we go ahead and go?
Well,
what do you want the audience to know?
I want to help define that for you a little bit, because what's happening there, that new perspective that you have, you see, when you're your thoughts, you're one-dimensional. When you separate and you realize that I'm not my thoughts, okay, you become two-dimensional, right? And so now in this two-dimensional state, you actually have the ability to be angry and yet at the same time to be watching your anger. And so the part of you that's watching your anger is not angry. So you have the ability to experience everything in life and at the same time stay on an even keel. Because you're not your thoughts. Your thoughts are like the storm that's on the surface of the ocean. And you're 50 feet down, just softly undulating.
Okay.
And so you can have all that shit on the ocean top and at the same time keep your balance and not be thrown. And when you say that different perspective, that's because you're coming from that observer state. the state of watching what's going on. And that person, that place is always calm.
Always calm.
And so it's not the calmness of the meditation that creates the tranquility. It's the calmness of moving out of your thoughts and not being wrapped up in the hurricane.
Yeah. And that's a
you're
great
doing
feeling.
Great.
Thanks.
You're doing great. You're doing
Thanks,
great.
man. Appreciate you, Bob.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is about it. Come to the end of this episode. But before I leave, and I do appreciate that. Okay, you have a lot to share. So please tell the listeners where they can find all your works, your book. Tell them everything, okay?
Sure. The best place to go is A Wise and
Okay.
Wise and Happy Life.
awiseandhappylife.com. Got you.
Right.
Okay. All
And
the
there
information
you'll
will be
find-
listed. I'm sorry.
And you can contact me. There's contact. You can contact me directly. Send me emails. You can. I have a 45-page book on meditation that's free. It's a free ebook that I wrote about what meditation is, if it's right for me. And you can just send me an email, and I'll send it to you absolutely free.
All the information will be listed in the description below. Wherever the description box will be listed at, and also this will be also on the my-shitout.com website. Okay, so yeah, that's about it. That came to the end of the show, the Dash It Out show. And Bob, it's been truly a pleasure. It's been truly a pleasure. Everyone, amazing co-host Bob Martin, everybody. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and give a round of applause.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. But yeah, so all the information will be listed in the descriptions below. That's it. That's all we have for today on the Dash It Out show. Don't forget to follow us on social media, every social media platform, or you can just sit here and kick it on my-shitout.com. It's okay. You don't need to go anywhere. Anyways, everyone have a great one. Hope that you're taking a lot from this episode. I know I have. And I feel very, very sure. Very, very sure. Bob, I hope you had a great time as well. But
I did. Thank you for what you do.
thank you. And yeah, till next time, I'm your host, Vic Dash Store. This is awesome co-host Bob Martin, and we out.